Hello retro gamers and welcome to the first review of 2017. And yes, the beard is gone. It feels like half my face is missing every time I look in a mirror. Regardless of stylish facial hair however, today we're taking a look at Street Fighter for the Super Nintendo, released in 1994 by Ubisoft when there were still two words. While a Mario Kart clone by all accounts, the first thing that stood out to me was the very familiar looking logo to another gaming franchise. In fact, they even shared the same first word in their titles. This could just be a coincidence though, since both games were developed by two very different companies and the included roster of characters differ. Maybe it's just all in my head. Regardless, let's find out if it is just another run-of-the-mill Mario Kart clone with a familiar logo from a certain fighting series, or if it does in fact actually have some surprises in store for us. This is usually the part of the review where I briefly sum up the storyline and I'll tell you if I think it's bollocks or not. However, Street Racer has no storyline. There isn't even a short afterthought ditty in the manual describing why the roster of freaks have seemingly decided to race each other. I can't say that bothers me though, as this game realistically doesn't need it. In a nutshell, Street Racer is a Mode 7 enabled kart racer with a slew of weapons and a few different game modes. The characters vary and don't really match up, but my favourite was Surf Sister, since we're both Australian and kinda look the same. She even gets her own racetrack based in this great southern land, so crikey, Stroof, koala. I don't particularly remember there being sandbars in the middle of Sydney Harbour, but then again, I was only 7 the last time I visited. Either way, the fact that they shaped one of the tracks into the form of Australia is quite a nice touch. You could even say it was very fair dinkum mate. The most prominent game mode is the Championships, which come in 3 different difficulties as well as a custom option. These are mostly as expected, as each race will score you points depending on your finishing position, and the player with the most points at the end of the season wins. Finish badly enough in a race however, and you get the chance to restart, of which you get 3 lives. Use those up, and of course, it's game over. Most of the tracks are designed to be quite windy and erratic, with so many players per track. While this in itself is not a bad aspect, it does affect how you use weapons, as there is not much wiggle room to effectively attack. Each player has the choice of side punching attacks, a front attack, and slightly confusingly, another side attack. I never use the front and side attacks as there is a bit of lag after the button push because an animation plays first. Since the tracks are so windy and all the other players are driving erratically all over the place anyway, using these attacks are fruitless, as after the mere seconds it takes for the animation to finish, the player you are trying to attack is probably already on another part of the screen. Over that, you can't really control the player as the attack initializes, which means you might end up careening off the track for your troubles. I was much more a fan of the side punch attacks, as for one you can comfortably use the side triggers as you race around the cramped quarters instead of the X and A buttons, but they also don't impact your control of the character at all. Also scattered over the tracks are turbo power-ups that last a few seconds, bombs that impact your health, and bonus points to help your ranking in the championship. You also have the ability to jump, which comes in handy for tracks that have obstacles. One such example is the water in between the sand and the Sydney Harbour level. It's a bugger! These don't cause you any damage, but it's advised you go to the trouble to jump over them since they will slow you down and it's very easy to get left behind in this game. It's in the other modes where the game attempts a bit of ingenuity. For one, there is the Rumble mode, which is more or less a demolition derby. Playing in an arena, the goal is to knock all opponents out of the play area, with the last one standing being the winner chicken dinner. I for one found this a bit tricky in a Mode 7 environment, compared to a 3D one as the hairpin turns required were a bit of a head spin, but I'm sure it would be fun in multiplayer. The other major mode, believe it or not, is soccer, or football if you're a snob. Instead of teams though, it's all against all to score as many points as possible, either to a predetermined score or within a time limit. I played this like I do soccer in real life. Terribly. My experience basically involved myself driving from one side of the field to the other, sadly watching a small sprite of a ball zoom around out of my reach. This mode suffers from the same imitated 3D problems as the Rumble mode does. Mode 7 doesn't really work that well when you're required to go back and forth a lot quickly. Things fly past at an amazing rate, making it way too hard to turn around in time. This would work better in a proper 3D environment. Rocket League is a good example of this, but competing against AI who are designed for the Mode 7 environment is a bit difficult. I'm sure it would be better against other human players, but since I have no friends I can't comment on that. Talking of multiplayer however, Street Racer supports 2 players, but also 3 and 4 with the use of a super multi-tap. This is the first game I can think of that I've seen that supports up to 4 players, so that's pretty cool. For the most part, I quite enjoyed the fast-paced action of the races and the visuals that Mode 7 can provide. Sadly however, the graphics work against Street Racer a bit. The colours are a bit garish and there's a lot of conflict going on. On first glance, it can be quite overwhelming and you have to really work through the noise a bit to understand what you're looking at. Luckily, I found this got easier the more I played, but I don't think a game has ever affected me in this way before. Over that, it was also a bit difficult to tell what could and couldn't be driven over in race. There were a few times where I hit something rock solid out of nowhere and it basically screwed me. This could be solved with trial and error, but the devs really should have thought of better ways to identify the boundaries of the tracks, since I lost more than a few restarts because of this. And while the graphics aren't perfect, I did however quite enjoy the music. It's memorable, catchy, and honestly one of the better aspects of the game. Street Racer is an okay game, but the tricky attack model, along with the modes which are quite unforgiving thanks to the realities of Mode 7, means it doesn't quite pull away from the Mario Kart clone status that it likely didn't want. But looking aside the fact that it appears to be cashing in on the Street Fighter namesake, the music is good and I do believe this could be a good multiplayer game, especially if you own a Super Multi-Tap. At the end of the day however, Street Racer is quite an affordable game, while Mario Kart currently is not. So if you're after a game like that but on the cheap, then this might be an option.